Everyone comes from somewhere, whether it's from the bustling city or the far-away, quiet and quaint. We all have our roots that we can never forget, and from these roots, a story resides. Today, we shall hear some of those stories. I'm Ira Glass, and on this episode of Fitchburg State Life, we look at two students, Chris and Sean, and the lives they lived before they decided to enroll in this university. Two different individuals with two very different stories to tell. Our first story comes from Christopher, or Chris as he prefers to be called, being an 18-year-old freshman here at the university. He shares with us what the last 4 years of his life, specifically high school, were like to him, what they meant to him, and how they shaped who he is today. He speaks. Alright, let's see. My freshman year at my high school was pretty bad. Let's see. Grades were not that good, especially because you go into a new place, new school, new environment, new teachers, new people. It was all too much to take in. But as I think about it, looking back especially, it wasn't that bad, but I remember specifically I had a couple teachers that were pretty bad, especially my World Civ teacher, because she was really old and super old-fashioned, super clear, cut and dry, to the point. She didn't like anyone messing around with the way she did things. And that was frustrating to begin with, but nobody said anything because everyone was slightly intimidated by her, myself included. Also that year I got my braces off, which was kind of exciting. Nothing too special. I had them on for 2 years, so that was something, but after that it was retainer, which I still have to this day, even though the bottom part broke off at some point. In terms of friends, I think my friend group at that time was pretty sizable, and it was pretty consistent too. We all, being freshmen, we didn't have cars or licenses or jobs or anything, so most of the time it was get home, from sports or clubs or whatever, go home, get your homework done, and then everybody was online playing games together until, late in the night when everyone started to get off one by one. And then the weekends were like that too, except for when we had lots of homework or projects or whatever. It didn't really matter. But for the most part, freshman year, it was a good starting point. It got me going in the high school, and it was something that I didn't hate too much, but kind of wish I could go back and change. As for sophomore year, that was a step up. Every year for me in high school got progressively better when I look back on it. Every year in terms of teachers, grades, what happened, for the most part. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, everything got better. Sophomore year in particular was a pretty big year for me because my brother that year went off. He joined the Marines and he had to leave for boot camp. So that was a big thing that happened around in my house, and he was gone for quite a long time. He went from about, I think, October to about late January, early February. That's when I went down to Paris Island, and that's when I went to go see him graduate, and it was a very big moment for him in his life, and I'm glad I was there to see it. But as of school, teachers, they got better, grades got better. Finally used to the school, too. Freshman year was, you get lost in the freaking school because it was so confusing. But after that, you knew it like the back of your hand. So there was nothing to worry about in that regard. Nothing too spectacular happened in sophomore year. That's the thing. It was pretty cut and dry, as my grade administrator called it. He called sophomore year, he wanted you to avoid the sophomore slump, because freshman year, people take consideration of that because they're new, and they really look into the seniors because they're going into college, and they need all their transcripts and letters of recommendation. So sophomores were kind of just left cut and dry for the most part, and you kind of have to fend for yourself, and I did alright, so I never fell into the slump, luckily. I know a few people that did, and it was pretty bad. But, no, sophomore year was pretty good. Let's think. Next is junior year, and again, that was another year that was, for the most part, pretty good, with the exception of a couple months in between, specifically the summer of sophomore year and junior year, I think. It was pretty bad for me. Wasn't too happy. That's the moment, that's kind of that time period when I started to notice that, everyone's growing up, people are getting jobs and all this different stuff, and people were kind of growing out of the groove that we had freshman year, and that was unfortunate because I kind of stayed in that groove. I mean, I matured too, but I just didn't take up the activities that they did because I wasn't too invested in them, or I didn't really care too much about them. So I kind of fell into this little kind of introverted corner, and I was by myself for a long time. But it wasn't too bad. I had a couple people that stuck with me through thick and thin, so I'll never forget them. I'll always be thankful for that. But for junior year as a whole, it was a good year. I had a lot of great classes. I loved all of them. I had great teachers too, especially one of my teachers I had twice, 2 years. My English teacher, she was freaking amazing. So I'm glad I had her twice in a row. But as for that, junior year was, again, pretty low-key, but it had some pretty good aspiring events. And then senior year, obviously, final year of high school, ready to get on and get going, and that's basically what happened. Last sets of classes, again, they were really good, great teachers. I met great friends that I kind of wish I still had kept in touch with today, but sadly do not. For one reason or another. But for the most part, senior year was, the big hurrah, finally getting out of high school, graduating, and moving on. And while I was excited, at the same time, I was, pretty scared like everyone else, oh God, college is next, what are we going to do? And for the longest time, I didn't really know where I was going until, someone told me about Fitchburg State, and then I went and checked it out, thought it was a great school, applied, and, now I'm here. So for the most part, my 4 years were pretty good. I have a lot of memories that I can look back on, really good ones, really bad ones. But for the most part, I'm very happy with what had happened.
Our second story comes from Sean, a 23-year-old freshman at our school that over the last 5 years has changed his mind from not wanting to go to college to wanting to go to college. Listen to what he has to say. So, it all started pretty much after high school. I had joined the Army when I was towards the end of high school, left 20 days after graduating, was on my way down to South Carolina to boot camp. Got yelled at for about 2 months. Not that bad. A lot, better than I thought, actually. Looking back, it was easy. Went to Alabama and then Florida for my advanced training for my job, which was pretty much the bomb squad. Wasn't sure if I was going to make it through the school pretty much from day one, if not even before that, because I learned how hard of a school this actually was and didn't think I could do it because I didn't really try in high school. Didn't really find myself a, good learner, I should say. So, I was in Florida for about 8 months. Learning this job, learning to love this job, loved the base we were at, had a beach on it, it was an Air Force base, had great food, they didn't really care what we did, not a whole lot of control over us, unless we were at the school, and then it was, learning time, and somehow graduated. I was amazed, I was so happy for graduating, it was a huge accomplishment in my life. Feel like I can do anything after graduating that school, just to, after seeing so many people fail out of that school. It was like an everyday thing. After that, I got stationed at Fort Drum, the Army's best kept secret, they say. But most people stationed there said if hell froze over, it's Fort Drum. Second I got there, learned that we were on the road to war, which means we're going to be training to go to Afghanistan. Within a couple weeks, we were on our way down to Virginia for some training. Got integrated with the guys pretty good, just going down to Virginia, training with them, seeing the type of shenanigans they get themselves into after we're done training, because we're just staying at a hotel, essentially. Really enjoyed that. Then came home for a couple months, did more training up in New York. Then we had to go to California for training where we stayed in the desert like it was Afghanistan, and we didn't have showers for the whole month we were there, so we all stunk and just smelled terrible. Then we went back to New York, got to shower, which was nice, did a ton more training, and then we were on our way to Afghanistan. We got into Afghanistan. I was excited, nervous, scared, all of those, but I'm happy to get to do my job I trained for. Started doing the job, loved doing the job, worked crazy hours doing the job, I'm sitting on the road disarming bombs, whatever. And but the politics started catching up that I thought we left back in New York. They came over with us. Numbers was a big thing that they cared about, how many missions we went on, no matter how tired we were, which was really wearing our team down, and everybody was getting pretty angry at each other. Hated this about the Army. Pretty much halfway through my deployment, started saying, I'm not staying in the Army forever. I'm not a lifer. I'm getting out. So my boss was like, okay, that's fine, but you need to start going to school if you're getting out. I said, okay, and then he made me sign up for school, an online school, when I was in Afghanistan. So I signed up for some online school. Didn't take any classes, just signed up and showed him what school I was going to and what for, but I never did any of the classes. After that, we came home. It was good to come home. Got home, still was 100%, I'm getting out kind of feel. Had to train all these new guys that were showing up because everybody else left. Was looking at jobs that, were similar to mine in the Army, but on, the civilian side. I wasn't the only one getting out of the Army at this time, though. A lot of people across my career field in the Army were getting out, and they had more experience than me. So getting these jobs that I heard about since I joined the, bomb squad, they were drying up really quickly because everybody getting out, and the government's just running out of money to hire these civilians for tons of money. So I started looking at other things. Everybody was pushing me for college. I kept saying, no, I'm not going to college. I'm not doing that. No. So I got out and I started landscaping for a couple months, working with a buddy. I was happy to have a job, I should say, but that was back-breaking work for low pay. I got into an electrical apprenticeship, thought that was the way out, thought that was the ticket. Did that for a couple months, probably like 4 or 5 months. Didn't really care for the company. They didn't treat their employees that well. I was riding in the back of a, van with no heat all the way to Boston in the middle of winter. That was really wearing my, my temper very thin, and kept saying, how much I didn't like it. I didn't know what to do really. And then my girlfriend at the time, now wife, said, you should go to college. So over my Christmas break with my job, I said, okay, I'll go to college for computers. So I didn't even have time off. She wasn't working at the time. So she went down to Fitchburg State, signed me up for all my classes, got me accepted, did everything for me. And everybody, I quit my job. They were kind of angry, but they understood. They were electricians, and they said, hey, if you have benefits to go to school, go to school. Showed up to school, didn't know where I was because of the winter semester. I got no orientation, and I just found my way around, and the rest is history. While Chris and Sean have two very different stories, both their stories end with them coming to Fitchburg State University. This school has students from all different walks of life. I'm Hourglass, this Fitchburg Life.